Ma'am, in the existing ecosystem of startups, not many startups are aware of the ground laws and the legalities. So, what would be your advice to the future entrepreneurs? What they should, have their background study done?
Okay. With startups, I think obviously the focus for most startups, especially in the initial stages, is towards building their businesses, cracking their sales, getting more customers, etc. So legal and compliance normally takes a backseat, and then it picks up steam once they have secured a lot of funding, especially from a professional, like an institutional investor who wants to have checks and balances in place and insists on a detailed due diligence and all of that. So I think once a startup is getting ready to seek external funding from a venture capital fund or from an institutional investor, that's the time when they should really look at doing something like a corporate cleanup of their records to ensure all their compliances are in order. And especially in the e-commerce sector, the laws are not that well edged in India. So in terms of your mobile apps, your websites, you need to have your basic terms and conditions, you need to have your privacy policies in place and ensure those checks and balances in respect of data storage, etc. are well adhered to.
Okay. With the changing policies from the government side, government is getting mature, stand up India boom is happening. How entrepreneurs should be ready with their legalities, and what future entrepreneurs should do in this area, probably because they largely focus on their operations, they largely focus on building teams, but they certainly don't put enough focus on the legalities.
Yes, like I said, the focus in the initial stages of the startup, when the startup is, getting bootstrapped and growing, is obviously not on compliance and legal aspects. So I think the right time, if I were to answer your question, is to look at perhaps doing it when you're pretty much looking at raising a fundraise and going out to a large audience, right? Doing a lot of outreach, especially if it is riskier business models, so something like an online pharmacy, for example, or something like e-commerce. Now it is heavily regulated, so I think startups should watch out for some of these key sectors which are more regulated perhaps than some other sectors.
But in the Indian judicial system, where your cases may prolong from 5, 10, 20 years, should there be a platform to shorten the time of the legal cases to be resolved?
Yes, and there are alternative modes of dispute resolution which are fairly popular now. Arbitration is fairly popular. It is in fact included as a clause in most commercial contracts because parties agree to bypass or to resolve their disputes through the arbitration mechanism of dispute resolution than approaching a court of law where the case gets resolved after like few years. So there's a lot of time and resource wastage, right? So these options are already there and it's picking up with every passing day.
Okay, now I see that this legal aspect becoming a part of the entire ecosystem, entire startup system. So going forward, will this be a progressive move that legal cases should be reduced down with the startups, or not with the startups, with the established enterprises? Our ecosystem should be developed in that way through arbitration or through other ways. The cases should be reduced down.
No, I think arbitration is really a choice where say two parties decide to approach an arbitral panel to resolve the dispute instead of approaching a court of law. You can't really bypass it at any if parties don't really agree. What is actually what we see increasingly as as we progress is that the startups are also becoming increasingly aware of basic compliances, basic checks and balances. So for example, today's startups as against 5 years back, they're very careful in, having in place basic founders agreements. The documentation is clearly recorded and captured, setting out the basic terms of, their understanding with the parties. So slowly the ecosystem is also evolving, and emphasis is there to ensure the legal aspects are well looked after, and not just waking up, when there is a problem on hand.
I understand. Final question to you. According to you, there should be different terms and laws for these startups?
I wouldn't think so. There are some exemptions right now under the Startup India scheme, but what is a startup? You're essentially a business venture, going about, providing certain goods or services like any other business. So why should there be a special treatment, right? That's
Okay.
my view.
Okay.
Perhaps in line with the ease of doing business in India, yes, definitely we need some reform in easing the regulations. But I feel we are in a good space. We don't need much more, many more exemptions.
But spaces like internet pharmacy, there's a lot of disruption happening.
Yes.
And there are legal, issues are coming in the way.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, in an ecosystem like India, with the way our systems work, lawmaking is a very slow pace. So we are unfortunately lagging behind in, amending our existing laws or bringing about quick amendments. For example, like say the US or the Europe. Some of the European Union countries. So yes, we definitely need laws to now at least recognize the major potential of technology as a disruptor in many industries, pharmacy being just one of them.
Understand.
We are having that issue. We are facing that issue every day with transport, right? With online taxis,
understand.
ride sharing. The law is just silent about it.
I
So
understand.
we need some clarity definitely on these aspects.
So in line with internet pharmacy, the cab aggregators, which are the other areas you see a lot of legal issues are happening?
Well, basically everywhere there is, in the age of the sharing economy, right? Entrepreneurs are coming up with newer models, newer business models to cater to perhaps a niche set of customers or to address a pain point using technology. So the power of technology to disrupt is being seen across sectors. I would say health, food tech, fintech, transport, practically anything and everything, right?
I understand. Thank you so much for your valuable
Thank
time.
you.